Yeah, yeah. Good evening, I'll call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Hampden Selectboard being held in the Townhouse Auditorium on March 3rd, 2025, at approximately 5:38 PM. Open the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is anyone recording the meeting other than ourselves? Dave, will you be recording? Not for this portion, okay. And Kristen, are you on? No, Kristen, okay. The first item on the agenda, we have some minutes. We have executive session minutes for January 16th, January 27th, and what's the other one? January 22nd, executive session. They're all dealing with the same subject, so I'll entertain a motion to approve all three of them at the same time, just for.
Sure, I'm going to make motion to approve all three executive session minutes without release.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have minutes from the February 3rd, 2025 regular session meeting. We met with the Board of Assessors to discuss veterans exemptions, Conservation Commission budget, and a financial update from the town treasurer, the town accountant. We went over the council on aging budget, some one-day wine permits for the senior center. Talked to the town meeting about, town moderator about the town meeting, water district discussion and their project, and we briefly reviewed the select board and board of health budget.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I have the February 4th, 2025 regular session meeting. We have the fire department budget.
This wasn't regular.
No,
Was
this
it?
is just the municipal.
What is it?
Yes.
Oh, this is the municipal buildings meeting, I'm sorry. The fire department gave their update on their project, the senior center, and the Thornton Burgess update, and the library director was here and gave us a brief analysis of what she thought the library could do at the Thornton Burgess.
Motion to approve.
Second. All in favor? Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is what? Oh, the Mass Audubon Society Annual Deer Pellet.
Oh, we have to open the public hearing?
Oh, no, we're not, oh, yeah, public, we're gonna do the, oh, yeah, public, sorry. We're opening the public hearing.
You need to feel left out, Eva, you know, like.
I did not.
What am I, chopped liver?
Yeah,
This is a public hearing. Guys, to Mass General Law 54, Section 25, BA1.
Not to be confused with two.
Right, and the purpose of it is that it allows towns to opt out of early voting by mail for municipal elections. Is there a recommendation from the registrars?
yes, I recommend that we not offer early voting for the local election. It is just cost prohibitive for one thing, and the lack of participation. We do offer absentee voting if people cannot be at the election. That's always an option, but to offer early voting, it's, as I say, it's just, it's not warranted, not for the cost or the work that's involved, for the very lack of participation.
So you're talking strictly the
Early
town election in May?
Town election in May, correct. We have to offer for state elections.
Right.
But for the town election, we don't. But it's at the recommendation of the Board of Registrars with the approval of the selectmen.
I motion to endorse the recommendation of the Board of Assessors to opt out of early voting for the municipal election in May 2025.
Any second?
Second.
Any further discussion, any input from the public? Anyone on Zoom that would like to comment on it? Talking, someone's talking, no? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, well, I got you. We have a number of items gonna be on the town meeting that, I don't know if we're gonna go to a proposition 2.5 exclusion or override or whatever, do you need, what's,
2.5 can come at the recommendation of the selectmen. It's got to be 35 days before the ballot, before the election.
does the town have to vote on it first and then the 35 days?
You can, the selectmen can put the 2.5 on the ballot. And if it's subject to approval at town meeting, I hate to say it, but it's likely it's going to be on the ballot anyhow. But you can suggest that a 2.5, you can put that on the ballot at the recommendation of the selectmen,
So we,
as long as it's done 35 days in advance of the
so we could
election.
have the town meeting and then the town election, it would be on, we could put it on that ballot.
Correct.
Okay.
If you
we do it
suggest it
35.
35 days in advance, right, it's got to come to me 35 days in advance.
Okay, all right.
And then the vote will make the determination of whether or not it's a valid question.
And in-person early voting, we have to opt in rather than
Correct.
opt out. Okay, we're not opting in for the same reason.
For the very same reason, right?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Eva.
To close the hearing,
Sorry to drag you out, so.
At least I was still here this time. Thank you.
close the hearing at 5:44 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Sorry. Aye.
All right. Now we're on to the
Audubon.
Mass Audubon Annual Deer Pellet Count Request. This is a second annual year they're doing this, they're requesting to have access to a certain portion of town property, which we have approved in the past.
I spoke to Andrea today, and I had also spoken to Jonah, who has been before our board a couple of times, and they're very appreciative of the work the town has done partnering with them, and I know Craig, they've been a tremendous partner with the Water Commission as well, you know, working with us. So Jonah would appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to the board in the near future. But I think what Andrea is doing, like Don said, was a simple request, and
We did this last year,
surely a
didn't we?
job, not necessarily a job I want, you know.
We did this last year, right?
We did.
Yeah, we did last year.
So they're gonna extrapolate some data, obviously, they only have 1 year of data so far, and maybe when we talk to them in the future, they'll tell us population going up, going down, who knows? I think it's going up, but Craig, you, in your backyard, what do you think?
There's a lot of deer pellets.
I mean, well,
That would mean, yes, there's a lot of deer.
I would think so, yes. Donna, you know, if you can speak, you lowlander, you, but,
I know, we have a lot of deer,
yeah,
but not so many since the coyotes have been hanging out there.
all the ones you imported, nice.
Yeah, and the bobcat.
Oh, nice. I'll make a motion to recommend allowing the Audubon to cross the town property to do the deer pellet analysis for 2025.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
They're not asking for our help, right?
No,
Good.
but it's a job that I
You
think
can
we
really
may,
tell what they're eating when you start analyzing that pellet.
Oh, good for them.
I think it's a job that we all may be qualified for at some point.
Or even reading Facebook.
All right, we have the police department budget, but also we have requests for the appointment of an officer. So seeing the officers here with his family, we'll do that next, chief. Yes. All right.
Hi.
What do we have here?
This is Wesley.
Wesley, hi Wesley.
Say hi.
Hi,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet
You
you.
best, you dress up better than we
Are
do.
you doing a computer?
Yeah, I got a computer right here.
Can I see it?
Sure.
You see all his games? Big tech guy. Phones, computers.
Yeah, well, it's not, I don't have it in anywhere because,
He has Minecraft on that.
Roblox.
What's this?
that's a mic. The TV there.
You can say hi to the people. Oh, yeah.
Is that mommy?
That's mommy.
Is that you?
Okay.
Who's this guy?
This is Everett.
Hi, Everett. Hi, Everett. All right.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening. Mr. Chairman and Board of, our Select Board, I'd like to introduce you to Andrew Poirier. Andrew lives in town here. I did send over a little sheet about Andrew. Andrew has been given a conditional offer by myself as a full-time police officer within our agency. As you see, myself, Sergeant Yvonne, and Sergeant Cooney had done a interview process. There was a background check done on him, and into a little bit of his history. As we do see that after the interviews were conducted, Andrew Poirier lives in Town of Hampden, on Wilbraham Road, with his wife Catherine and his 2 children that are here. Andrew is currently a corporal at the Hampden County Sheriff's Department. Has been employed there since March of 2014. He attended and graduated their Corrections Academy. He's a native of Holyoke, 2009 graduate of Holyoke Catholic High School. Andrew obtained a Bachelor of Science from Westford State University, and a major was Criminal Justice and Environmental Science. While at the Hampden County Corrections, he oversaw and supervised inmates. As his career progressed over there at the Sheriff's Department, he attended the Reserve Intimate Police Academy, and that was through the MPTC. As you all are aware, 2019, 2020, there was a bridging process that was allowed to go about. So you became if you were a part-time police officer, there was online training along with hours that you could get, which was a 2,400 hour patrol hours. Through the Sheriff's Department in working patrols over at the Forest Park area, alongside Springfield Police, also in Holyoke Police. He was able to get his 2,400 hours. He became post-certified to be recognized as a full-time police officer. So he has done some work with the SWAT team through the Corrections Department, Forest Park area, the Marine Unit, and he was highly recommended. We had 2 applicants for the position, him and another. The other one had a little bit of experience in the policing world more so. Andrew definitely seemed to be our one that rose top over the other one for the first pick. And so I think he's going to be an excellent addition to the police department, and I'd like to recommend him to the board for a full-time appointment. It is contingent upon, he has one more step, which is a psychological to do. It has been scheduled. We just found out today it's going to be scheduled for Wednesday. And he's already finished up everything else, and then he'll give us 2 weeks' notice, and we'll get him on board to start training.
How long you been in Hampden?
2019, I moved here.
How do you like it?
I love it.
And your oldest is in,
He's 2.5.
so he's not in the pre-K or anything?
Not yet.
2.5?
Yeah.
Pretty sharp kid.
Sharp kid, yeah.
He was reprogramming Don's computer
He
already.
finally got it to work.
Oh, yeah, look at that little pop-up screen there. I mean, we got post-certification, you live in Hampden. I mean, I'm not sure there's really much else we need to hound you on, you know? You fit all the qualifications, right?
Tried.
Yeah.
We did well on this one, yes.
Tell me about the Marine Unit.
We're part of the Connecticut River Task Force, so we help patrol Connecticut River. We also patrol Lake Congamon. We do ATV patrols in the Holyoke reservoirs and Cobble Mountain as well.
Oh,
I was thinking Scannick can maybe go for a
Yeah, yeah.
right?
You gotta take a kayak
The
down there, maybe.
department kayak?
Department kayak, and we can rent one.
My
from the fire
scanty, I'm
department.
thinking of my backyard most of the spring.
Questions, I'm assuming talking to Mike Cooney, you're gonna get a real sense of how we feel about community policing.
Yes.
Which is key, and living in town, great background to that as well. So I would only say welcome to Hampden. I mean, if you've been vetted by Mike, who's been here longer than me, get it,
I think he opened the police department, didn't he?
something like that,
Yeah.
yeah, back when it was spelled P-O-L. I mean, they had the whole thing. What do you want to say? For myself, welcome to Hampden.
Thank you.
A motion?
That too? I'll make a motion to endorse the chief's recommendation to appoint Andrew Poirier
Poirier, yep.
to the role of patrolman, subject to all required certifications, et cetera. Probationary status or no?
There'll be a year's probation, that'll be in, yes.
Second.
Any further discussion? You got anything to say?
You got the thumbs up, we're good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome aboard, sir.
Get a quick picture, Tom?
Picture?
Thank you. The board will go around the back, Andrew, take a quick picture for everyone. Anything you want to come over?
Because I know. Stop, because I know that you bring, I know the ones there, thing.
Exactly right.
Here.
West.
Oh, you want to get lower, yeah.
Come on, get in.
Me too?
Yes.
Okay. Where should I go?
Right next to you. Chair.
Yeah, pretend you like it.
Right? We're all friends now.
No one lasts so long.
1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
See you later, big guy.
Congratulations. All right. Yes. So, we need to go tomorrow. Easy part.
Okay, yeah.
How you doing? Thank you. Thank you.
How much it gonna cost us?
A lot.
Negotiate salary yet?
That's a question.
What?
Do you negotiate salary yet?
Yeah?
Yeah.
You should.
What are we doing now? Where are we?
Police budget. Looks good, chief, knock 10% off and we're good to go.
All right, I'll go back to the drawing board, see what we can do.
All right.
All right, we're done. Let's
We're
move on.
good, thank you.
Thank you.
What do we got?
All right, so, good evening again. As you can see, we've submitted our advisory sheet along with the budget. I did like when we had the table here, but it's all right. Anyway, so the chief salary, general salaries have increased, the career incentive has increased, elections, town meeting has decreased due there's no presidential election. Towing clerk stays the same, training has increased. Cruiser maintenance has increased. We are not looking for a new cruiser. Equipment stayed the same for within inside the agency. Building maintenance, WEMLEC has stayed the same, and general expenses has kind of increased. So as you can see, most of the line items have increased by a little bit, not a lot. Obviously, we are under contract obligations for the salaries for our officers as assigning a new contract.
Did you spread your stuff out?
Yeah, maybe.
I mean,
Can you tell me I was a little scorched? Thank you. Hey, Doug, how you doing? Good.
We're gonna meet downstairs for a few minutes, and then we'll come up with this committee up here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's up at 6 p.m. We'll see you.
Yeah.
All right, so continuing, thank you. Continuing, obviously, not obviously, but as you can see, there has been a few increases. As I did say, contractual obligations, cruiser maintenance, career incentive. We did do the career incentive, which is different from our Quinn bill, where we have a couple of officers, including our newest officer, that is going to get the career incentive immediately, starting July 1.
Just Quinn bill though, right? It's just a,
He's not Quinn bill, no, he has a bachelor's degree, he'll fall under the career incentive, right? There's no Quinn bill. Quinn bill, as we have had in the past, is work, and then you get, you get paid up front. With a career incentive, it's paid right up front once you get your degree.
Now,
Count for new,
inside the current fiscal year, how is that gonna impact you? Or he's not gonna be qualified until next salary?
He's not qualified to the next budget, which is July 1.
All right.
as far as career incentive, does that account for new degrees that are coming online?
That doesn't, yes, there's one online that we have that I've been made aware of, that does account for that, right? That's why that, right, yeah. Going to the cruiser maintenance, we did take, I'm sorry, were you somewhere else, John?
No, I'm trying to follow as we skip through the first part. I think I would appreciate just in the future, Scott, most departments come in with a 25 and a 26 page, so we see what the increase is.
On the
You
back?
didn't get the advisory?
No, I'm saying on the individual pages, like that type of thing.
Oh,
No,
It's on the back if it's broken down.
right, but I mean, inside.
you wanna see inside.
Inside, yeah.
okay.
Rather than lump.
Yeah, so we can see what went up.
Oh, okay, I see, okay, I'm sorry, yep.
Cruiser maintenance.
Cruiser maintenance is going up because of
So-
vehicles.
So we're not going for a new vehicle, but to keep them going, and we did talk about, we're approaching, I think, 80,000 with one of our more older vehicles, which you would say, but it's not really that old, a lot of hours on a vehicle, but obviously we're going to experience more issues as we move along. We have also included the ACO car that I've been taking care of in there. She's had some work the last 2 years that we've been concerned about, so we kind of just spread it out a little bit. Some may take more than others, but there's no really set increments for each vehicle.
What's the delivery time on vehicles now, ballpark?
To be honest with you, they said rather quick. If we were to get one right in July, if we were to get one in July, we would, once you do the upfitting, we would probably have it within a month and a half.
Oh, I'm kidding.
They have a lot of vehicles. They have a lot of vehicles right now.
Okay. So the possibility of a fall vehicle would still get it inside the year?
Yes, that would be a
It's gotten a lot
suggestion.
better.
Yes, yeah, it's gotten a lot better. They've, McGovern has taken over the market now through MHQ. They've got the market to do all their upfitting there and everything, and they've been getting a lot of vehicles on the ground for them, moving them throughout the state. So going in with, other, the expenses that have moved up through the general expenses, the building maintenance, that just falls into play with our annual contracts that are increasing, along with other vendors that we have that have increased. And so just keeping, everything is going up. And just going up with, when we get the new invoice come in, and we're showing an increase. We put that in.
All right, one thing on there, this is, I know it's a small number, but you're the only municipal property in town that has an outside service put along.
So I can explain this. So when I first became chief, we had sprinklers. And the sprinklers were on, the lawn was being mowed by the highway department. And the landscaper who put the sprinklers in basically came by and said, "Chief, I want to take care of your lawn, I want to mow it, and I'm going to mow it just for the town of Hampden. No cost." Okay, and so he started mowing our lawn. And he maintained the lawn, he liked the angles, he liked going by, he had a business in town, and really liked it, so he continued on. So I went over and spoke with Mark, and Mark said, "I have no problem, it frees me up an extra summer guy to do other things around." So the increase of monies is for fertilizer, spring cleanup, fall cleanup, maintenance of the lawn itself, the flower beds, and around the police department, not just for the mowing. So that figure is what constitutes our spring, fall cleanup in the lawn, the edging, the blowing of all the materials around the parking lot and the sidewalk to keep it looking nice.
Right, but what the highway department does for every other town building as part of their budget.
It's just mow.
No, they're not. We see them out here edging, we know that they maintain, so I appreciate it.
No.
No, I was there at the time, I certainly appreciate what St. Clair has done.
Me too.
Volunteerism is terrific,
Right.
but it's that type of thing, why does this department have a budget for it? Not that cemetery doesn't as well, but when the guys are 400 feet down the road at the senior center doing the same business,
I mean,
under the
if
town budget.
if I can get a commitment from the highway department wants to take care of my flower bed, bring in mulch, do the edging and all that, then I'll take out the $5,000. If that's what you want me to do.
I'll talk to him
mean,
next time he comes in, but
yeah, I mean, I just know that
I'm sure
previously,
there's somewhere else you could use $5,000.
I mean, $5,000 is nothing for what he's charging me to do what he's doing.
I agree,
I mean,
but
a
I'm sure
regular,
there's somewhere else you could use it.
But then there's highway budget will probably go up.
I think he's got a guy next door, it's like, the guy is there.
Yeah, well, it's fertilizer and mulch,
I think for $5,000, but if that's what you want me to do, I can look at that.
Septic pump,
Septic pumping, so the septic system has to be pumped out every 3 to 4 years. We utilize Bond's septic
Right.
service.
I thought it was at the senior center.
No, we have our own septic system.
Do you?
Yeah.
Shared well, isn't it, though?
We
Shared
have a well, we have a shared well, yes.
well, but yes.
And that's why we had the issues with the sprinklers and stuff like that, right?
Is it really that low usage where you go every 3 to 4 years?
Well, I've been there 4 years now, we've done it twice.
Okay. Did usually they say every other year?
Okay, and I know they did it this year, so they're gonna do it again next year?
No, they shouldn't be doing it this year. They shouldn't be doing
I'm
it.
seeing your septic pump, 1,500.
We got 1,500, it's there in case we have a problem with it, it's there, but I mean, I put it in there to have it in the budget to possibly be done.
No, I just happened to have, Billy came this year and did mine, and I think it was 500, roughly, for.
We have considered a business, commercial, it's definitely bigger tank, bigger setup, and that's the cost of what he gets. Yours was only 500, you said?
Yeah, for a normal home.
For a house, yeah, for a house. That's not right.
But it's,
So I want to talk about training, okay? I know the Mass Police Training Committee had some issues in that they suspended online training for a while. Is that still off, or is it on, or?
so the MPTC did suspend online in-service training, which is required and mandated by police officers in and around the state. And they did suspend it. It is back up and running. It's a hybrid model as it was before. The online was suspended. The hybrid model in person was still continuing. They've gone back to online and allowing that to continue.
We have that, we allow, our contract allows online, right?
So our officers, through their contract obligation, whether training's in town or out of town, either in lieu of a shift or overtime, they get paid to that online training. Since it's, when COVID first came in, we were doing all of our training online where the officers would get paid overtime to do that training.
You got, the other thing is, you have a vacancy in the sergeant's position. At one time, you had suggested a lieutenant position. Is it worth opening the contract to talk about a lieutenant's position?
You know, we probably are we definitely need to go ahead and establish something. A lieutenant, as I'd said before, and I still stand by, a non-union lieutenant is a big plus for the chief of police in the aspect of internal investigations, can deal with the union contractual members in a different way, and overseeing underneath the chief of what needs to be done. I do say a recommendation of possibly 2 sergeants with 1 lieutenant would be a big plus for our agency. Again, there are certain criteria that we have to discuss and put in place to start to look at that. I don't know if we're there yet, especially knowing now that, you know, we have an open vacancy for a sergeant, and possibly another one coming in July, where we do actually have to get that exam going. It's a 45-day posting time to get that exam out there. I'd like to get a sergeant's list prepared, and then maybe really dive into if it's something that we can maybe have some talk, myself and Brian, or the chairman of the board, of where we may want to go. There is going to be a definitely increase in salary for that lieutenant, above and beyond of what our sergeants are. I do think it would be very helpful to our agency.
You had a resignation of a sergeant, so he was doing IT stuff as well?
Correct.
Okay, now who's doing that now?
So I do have another officer who was the secondary officer, according to the contract obligation, is a primary and a secondary. And that secondary officer has stepped up to the primary position, is now continuing to move forward. He did have experience even prior to that sergeant that has resigned of running our in-house IT. I do think it's a benefit to have someone in-house, but also, you know, we might be wanting to look at a point in time to have someone come.
I mean, do you think, again, that's a contractual thing? I think the contract says it has to be an officer, but is that something that we need to reopen and change? Because I know Wilbraham has a civilian, right?
Correct. So Wilbraham does have a civilian that has come in to run their IT department, along with their town has their own IT department. We've been very lucky to have an officer inside and know, and has been experiencing our system, came from here Main Street and went over to the new building and was part of building our infrastructure, which is a big plus. But there is, again, another, I think, time to talk about, do we go ahead and have one person inside and then also include an outside person that can work hand in hand with them?
You mentioned the retirement possibly in July. Have you figured that in? There must be a payout for that, right?
So that payout has not been figured out in my budget itself, no.
Is
But there will be a payout.
you talk to the treasurer about, usually that goes under employee benefits,
Employee benefits, correct, right.
so maybe you need to,
So I did talk to the treasurer. I have a somewhat commitment of expectation of being July of that. So I did talk to the treasurer about what we're gonna have to look to do, and I'll continue to talk.
are we better off hiring another officer than paying overtime?
Well, as I mentioned before, and I think we brought this up last year, it's not, you can't just take one officer and put them in there and cover wherever our open happens to be. I think maybe down the road, we start to add, if that's something we want to do, and there's a concern with our overtime. I mean, you hire a new officer at, say, $64,000, then you add the benefits and add that in. My overtime maybe is around $100,000. And so one guy is not going to cover it. Our contract here, when we did have our detective's position, who was my utility detective, that allowed me to cover some of the overtime, I can't do that anymore with the contract. We have to go out to the first right of refusal to our officers. Our officers get 40 hours a week to their full-time first before it goes to a part-timer. So, as I mentioned before, dropping to a 32-hour for the full-timers, allowing our 4, 5, or even 6, 7 part-timers to work along with that first right of refusal. I don't see, I mean, I think I did come here a few years ago saying that we might be losing most of our part-timers. I mean, coming 2027, the expectation is there's no more per se training, and everybody who is certified is going to become certified. I think we're going to still have those part-timers out there that are willing to work. I have some on now. So I don't know, if you add one, you're going to have to add 2, 3, one per shift. Because now when you go to minimum manning, someone's not going to be,
Yeah, okay.
so and
What about the school resource officer over at Green Meadows? Is that worth it?
I think a person that breaks the barrier down as a police officer with the school kids, I've done it. I'll stand behind a school resource officer all day long. It's a home run. Can we have that school resource officer do more within that school? Sure. Are there more jobs that we'd like to be able to give them, or more hours over there? Sure. But to be able to have our students from pre-K to 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th.
Those pre-K and kindergarten kids are a problem?
They haven't been, but they could be.
I will tell you, living next door, Don, I hear it every day.
You see
One
them
thing
coming in
on the
uniform.
School resource officer, but you're bringing a guy in at overtime. And, that's different than it was when it started. When it started, it was a guy on patrol, and the chief would assign him to be SRO at that time. Maybe that's how it evolved from DARE days, et cetera, when it morphed from one to the other. So I think kind of the question is, does it have to be somebody brought in on overtime to be SRO?
Unfortunately, the contract, we're obligated by the contract. We have had it the different ways because we've stood by it, but the most recent contract doesn't allow me to do that. And so,
It doesn't allow you to put a patrol guy and say, hey, for the next 3 hours, you're going over to Green Meadows?
I could take the guy off the road, sure, and just leave one off on the road and one in the school, but I have, but I can't.
And if he has to leave, he has to leave.
But no, I need to have according to that post commission, I have to have a certified SRO now. I can't just take John Flynn as my patrol
It's
officer.
not
and put him in there.
our contract, it's post as the requirement.
No, our contract doesn't allow me to use my detective to backfill and let him go over there and not cause overtime. The new contract says that I can't use my detective as a utility detective that I wanted it to use. And if I put my SRO over there who's certified over there, I have to go ahead and fill it, first of all, with someone from the rank and file of overtime.
Then they have to be certified.
And they have to be, well, no, they don't have to be certified. My SRO, who's in the school, has to be certified.
The only way to change it is to go to minimum man.
So if we're going to open up the contract, we've got to, we open up the contract and we deal with a bunch of things that we've,
Right, you just change it by changing the minimum manning, right? Right, your minimum manning is at 2 now. So if you put one over there for half a day, now you're down to 1.5.
So my,
You have to backfill that, which is what you're getting at.
right.
But if you added another person on during the day, you could technically throw somebody over there, but then now you're paying the salary for another.
So the way we had it prior to this contract signing is I had my detective, who's my utility detective. I could take him and put him on days with my other officer working and send my SRO over there. This contract here doesn't allow me to do that. This contract here now has tied my hands and said, if that guy goes over there, this shift opens up, and now you have to pay overtime for a guy to come in.
But my point is, you could put 3 officers on during the day and put 1 over there. Right, but then now you're increasing salary.
Well, then I'd have to have another certification of an SRO,
No,
right?
no.
No, I think even with 3 guys, you run into the same problem Scott's talking about here with the SRO certification.
Oh, you
can't-
you have your
That
full-time guy who's an
might not be
SRO.
certified
Right.
as SRO.
Right.
No,
I need-
that doesn't affect that. You have the SRO, who's an officer.
Okay, so he goes over there, he's working the school.
Right.
Right? And then I put 2 guys on the road.
Right.
Bring someone in, but I have to bring someone in overtime. I can't just,
Well, why can't you just change the schedule so there's 3 officers on during the day?
where am I gonna get that? I have to pay them there to be a full-time officer overtime. I can't just say, you're coming in and not,
Why does it have to be overtime? Why can't you adjust the schedule so there's 3 officers on during the day?
because we don't have the numbers to do it. We have.
That's my point.
Well, you know, then you're gonna add more officers on our department, sure. But you're not just gonna add 1 officer, full-time officer, as Mr. Chairman said, to alleviate all the overtime issues. You're gonna have to hire at least 3 more full-time officers to take 1 per shift and then go ahead and work that into the schedule. The ratio is really 4 officers for 3 shifts. Then you can go down to a minimum manning, but if you're gonna take 4 officers, say, times 60,000 plus benefits, you're way over what we're spending in overtime already.
You only have 1 officer that's certified as SRO,
Yes.
and the certification costs,
The training's a couple $1,000s. They have to do a yearly annual, but the actual get into the certification there, I think there was a 5-day class that they had to go to, say, time and a half, because they get paid time and a half to go to that overtime class. The initial to get into maybe be a little bit more expensive, but after that, so, you know, you could certify a few.
the SRO part, is there a requirement statewide that X number of hours must be maintained at the school for SRO, or it's just, I mean, right now you have 60 hours in, and if the SRO goes on vacation, okay, it's for 56, it is what it is, or whatever, 52. So if you did choose to make one of the patrol people the SRO, or worked out, they got certified or whatever, and they were 2 hours into their SRO shift and got called out to help with something, it's not like there's a deficit in SRO hours that needs to be made up to the school. But it's like the DARE officer could have gone to any call he needed to and just left Barn Burge at the time.
As our SRO
Could as
is
well.
there, is considered another
Something
extra
comes
man.
up, exactly, no, right.
I've got an extra man, and I've
Right.
brought someone in overtime, plus I have my SRO who's at the school, who's coming to assist with whatever events going on in the community that we need help with.
Well, kind of back to Craig's point there, the 1.5, the option is whether to backfill that or not. And that's where I'm saying, okay, is this shift here, and you're the chief, you know the status, you know how things run during the day. Is there a possibility that SRO could be the patrol, if they were certified, et cetera, could be that person during the day and save that 60,000?
I guess we could look at that.
I have to say, your budget, it went up 6%. In this times, and of course, knowing what's there in the contract, et cetera, not bad. When you see all the other constraints we have, electricity going up, fuel going up, et cetera. So I applaud you at keeping, managing as best you could with it.
Thank you.
So,
Anything else? We're done with you.
Thank you.
started with a 10% cut, and you still walked out with 6%.
For now.
All right,
For
well,
now. It's not over till it's over, right? Thank you.
we're gonna skip over select board health thing. We have a joint meeting with advisory, a school committee. How do you want to do this, Doug?
Well, we're your house, Don.
You haven't heard their presentation yet, right?
Correct.
Come on up. Take a seat. Can they get in here? Can they?
Yeah.
Can they screen share?
Mind if I sit next to you? May I sit next to you, sir?
We don't have technology with us. Screen share.
They kept it at a minimum. If you're not a quorum, you kept it that way.
No, we have to.
Do you want us to send you a document?
Right, you got more than one vote.
I think we got the document.
Sean, let me sit next to them, I can.
We have the documents to screen share?
Okay.
Got everything in my iPad.
Documents that were,
You gotta ask John.
this afternoon,
Do we
tour,
share them?
if that's what they want to do.
Yes, I think.
Documents.
Please.
You don't have a quorum.
We do, we're a subcommittee.
We're a subcommittee.
Special shirt.
We're going to start with capital.
Water bottle, it's got,
Let's just start with capital.
You want to start with the budget?
Is that the same?
Capital.
Do you want to start with the budget rather than the capital?
yes.
It's fine, there were 7 documents that were included. Nothing is. Oh, so this is the one that we'd like to do first if we can.
That's the capital one.
Yep.
So I'm just going to call us to order,
Did you put it in the second one?
Lauren?
like the color. Is that okay?
We should call out the order.
Can I call ourselves?
Sure.
Okay, so I'd like to call the Finance Operations Committee. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to call the Operations Subcommittee to order.
Yeah, I'm here.
Mike Terabasi, Sean Kennedy, aye. Michelle Boudreau.
Here.
There you go. All right, we are in open session, thank you.
Just so it's clear, advisory, we have a posted meeting this evening. We actually started downstairs and we just moved ourselves up here.
Thank you. All right, you got that?
Yep.
Share away.
We should have that available, Brian.
Oh, they can do it, huh? Oh, there you go.
There we go.
We got a bigger TV.
That's ginormous.
What you can do. That's good.
We'll focus mostly on the right-hand side of this, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So just by way of introduction, my name is Doug Slaughter. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Operations, and HR. I've met many of you recently, but not probably all of you, so I'd like to say I'm excited to be here and just started in the beginning of January, so hopefully I'll provide you with the information you need to make the decisions you need to make. In talking about capital requests, in an earlier meeting in December, I think, with some requests, laid out a little bit of what we're looking at for future years. I've spent some time refining that with the help of staff and feedback from both towns as well as the school committee. Last Thursday night, school committee met and approved this as a capital plan for fiscal '26. In the top section there under Hampden, we've got a series of projects that are shared. And so your portion is in that fiscal '26 column. So there's stadium seating, there's adding and replacing mini split AC units. There is the upgrade to the radio communication within the building. And there's a camera system upgrade, and then from facilities, there's a tractor that they need. And that's all shared equipment. I'll get into the other stuff that's particular to Green Meadows in just a minute. The thing I'll share with you, and I sent a note out today, a memo with some description of how we came to the pricing that we came to. You see the total project cost there in the right-hand column, the rightmost column, and it says 20%. For Hampden, it's not exactly that, it's fractional, it's nearly that, but it's a good ballpark for what the division is between the two. Relative to the stadium seating, we have a quote from a vendor on that. I shared that with you all today. Hopefully we get a chance to look at that if you haven't today. But that was just for materials and installation, and the day I actually received that from our athletic director, he's like, hey, here's the quote, was the day that some tariffs were announced on aluminum. So, we put a pretty hefty contingency in regard to that. And so that price tag is bigger than we had back in December. But I think we're trying to hedge our bets on what we think we're going to need for refined design and permitting. And then, of course, whatever the cost increases for things like aluminum are. For our AC units, we've installed a few in the last couple of years. We're continuing to install some. That's generally driven by particular need for meeting student requirements. We've got experience with that even in this current year, so we're using our recent purchasing history on that to define the price for that. The two-way radio repeater, we have a quote from a vendor on that. We're actually, they loaned us the equipment to test out, to see if it would work for our circumstance. So we're currently using it on loan at the moment. Their quote's officially for $10,540. They may very well honor that quote. They may redo it when we actually go to make the purchase. But in the meantime, I did a small contingency there in case they raise the price just a little bit. Should be pretty close to $11,000 for the total cost. The camera system upgrade, pretty significant upgrade to the camera system at the high school. We had in December a much larger number there. Went back and looked at the quote both for labor and for materials, and not sure why it was so large, unless it originally may have gotten onto the capital planning as a multi-building kind of upgrade, but even with a modest, contingency for what might be increases in prices over the last year or so, it's about half what it was originally on our sheet. So hopefully that's a much more palatable, purchase there. It also will integrate nicely with the police has a similar system. So if we want to, and we can find appropriate, sort of policy around that, we can integrate with the police department, but more importantly, just our own equipment, both at the middle school and high school are going to be on the same system, so that's helpful there. And then that RTV is a form of tractor. It's not like a classic, like plow the fields tractor, but it's a small device used for a lot of, things like spreading sand and salt, that sort of thing. We did a vendor quote on that. We called the vendor up, said, hey, what's the price tag?
One quick thing, if we could just roll back to the bleachers.
Yep.
So we had the email that came in today, and it showed a budget price of 1.395. And but your spreadsheet shows 1.8. Is that the contingency, you're carrying
Yeah.
that much contingency?
Yeah, pretty significant contingency on that one, which is like I said in the memo on that one, it has a significant contingency, and I think we just have, we'll have to do design permitting, so that's just showing up and put the erector set together as, without any specific design. If we have some specific design criteria we need to, apply that we hadn't factored into that, so we'll just have to do that. But more importantly, I think it's just the variability in price that we think might happen. And of course, there are other things.
Which, you're saying a significant jump from this afternoon at 1.4, and now walking at 1.8.
Right.
So a $400,000 jump, 25%, I would talk about the tariffs.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, how does the money get returned? Is this an appropriation that's spent up to these numbers, or, say we appropriate, Hampden appropriates the $442,000 based on,
Right.
worst case numbers?
Right.
Does that number not get spent? Is it I'm gonna say it's not a blank check to allow you to spend that or something. You
Right.
come back in the bill and the money just gets released and recalculated against the tax rate in a future year?
The approval for capital, you may want to speak to this too, but I can speak to my experience with this, is that if it's a formal approval by town meeting for a particular project, it has to fit into that project for us to spend it, for number one. Anything that's under that is turned back to the town. So we say, we no longer need this, then you can rescind that, and how you choose to then spend that is, your call.
Well, I guess that's my point is, you tax for this, and you're going to go ahead and collect the whole 442.
Right.
You submit bills and they come in at 380.
Right.
For the whole thing. And then at the recap sheet, you get 40,000 that goes to free cash for the following year, basically.
Yeah.
But we've already,
I think that's the way it would work. It'd be like.
But if this is inside the budget-
It's this appropriation.
but if it's inside the budget, we've already technically increased the levy limit to accommodate the larger number, right? Right, so
But it would be a debt exclusion. It should be a debt exclusion. not
if it goes this high,
not a levy limit.
you don't think you can fit it in?
I thought in the past that on capital projects like this, we were actually billed for the project right off the invoices. So it would be like any other appropriation we make. I don't think they'd get the money until they spent it. And we pay our 20%, and anything else is just an unused appropriation, it gets rolled into free cash the next year. I'm pretty sure that was the way it's worked in the past. We would be sending them a check for $659. They'd be billing us as they did each project.
Correct. That's correct.
Right. But they're authorized up to their worst case.
Like
But they're
every
not gonna
other,
bill it.
like every other line.
I agree, that's what I'm saying, the coming back goes into free cash, but it raises the number. If you're thinking it's a debt exclusion because this is over what we can handle inside, then it wouldn't affect it.
Yeah, that's another discussion.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's
Green
all
metals.
right. I think the other thing I'll say is at a conversation we had with the Wilbraham Finance Committee, they asked about things like naming rights. And so I think, if there are other sources that can help support this, then of course, we'll leverage those as well, which is also a potential reduction to a project cost, if possible. I mean, I don't know how likely that is or not. That could be,
Dunkin' Donuts bleachers.
What's that?
The Dunkin' Donuts bleachers.
No, Davenport Stadium sounds pretty good to me.
While we're on the topic of
Right on,
bleachers,
Don.
what's up with the current bleachers? Are they just not safe anymore? Are they wearing out?
So I know less about that than probably anybody in
I
this.
think,
They're
I
really
think it's just
bad.
safe to say that this is time for them to be, one
Yes.
side's already been done
Yeah.
several years back, and it's time for this side to be.
9 years ago when I started on the,
I know.
9 years ago when I started on the school committee, we were talking about how old they were and they needed to be replaced. We have taken it apart, we've sanded it down, we've duct taped and glued and done everything that we could, and it's just not,
We know we're on borrowed time with
yeah, very much so.
There's cracks and breaks that
Yeah.
hit your bottom when you sit. And
Are these items going to be presented to the town as separate capital items? Because it can be a warrant article that says, $1 million for the bleachers.
You're thinking like last time where we broke it up.
Yeah, we broke them, yeah.
Maybe it'll be, this will be one, and then these can be different.
Right, so I think that, again, I think that the ones that are assessed via the regional, so regional properties, and that, will probably be separate from those that are Green Meadow specific, which are much more just like you would for a police cruiser or, a fire truck or something like that, as far as a capital appropriation. So, with the projects there, Green Meadows, which are mostly smaller in scale and based on our history with some things, those are much more your sort of capital planning articles that you would have. You may do them as one, you may do them individualized. I'm not sure how you particularly approach it in your town meeting. I think that's different than what's happening in the top portion, which would be, divvied up and then assessed by virtue of the fact that you have a piece similar to your operating budget. There's the capital's assessed as a separate thing. But again, the rules still apply as far as the specifics to the projects. We still have to only spend money on the things you authorize us to spend it on. So,
Well, what I'm asking is it going to be, the last time I believe, didn't we do like 3 different warrant articles for the different things? So are you going to do the stadium separate and the AC unit split separate and the, maybe package the
Are you
other
at that
things?
point yet, or
Well, so what's that?
are you at that point to make that decision?
No, but I'm just thinking, last year, I mean, we pushed to have the capital separated from the operating budget because you didn't want the operating budget to rise or fall based on, capital request. And I would think the same will apply here. And I think there's a discussion to be had that maybe some of those things should be grouped, but it's a discussion to have.
Well, because we're going to close the warrant tonight, so we want to at least have some placeholders in there for that stuff.
Right. And I have no preference. It's probably more on what works best and functions well for your community to make the decisions they need to make. And
I would say if it's presented to one town one way, that should be presented to both towns the same way.
Right.
and I'm not familiar with exactly how Wilton does it either, so I'm flying a little blind here.
On the Green Meadow stuff, Brian and I took a tour over there earlier when Aaron was here, walked around with Daryl. At that point, it was prior to the fall town meeting, they seem to think there was a pretty prevalent need to get the security upgraded at the school. They had door lock concerns, they had the entrance concerns with some of the doors not being terribly secure. And I'm surprised that that didn't show up here, because when we came back and talked about it, that was number 1 or 2 on their list. Now, does that mean that you were able to fix all that without coming back to us?
Oh, I wish, but I don't think so.
Exterior
I
door
think,
replacements.
what's that?
I'm sorry.
I think the thing is that, it is one of those things that it does need attention, and it is one of those that also we want to do it in a pretty thoughtful way in regard to that, and so that, there are some things that we had in our listing for, when we talked to you guys in December, that got bumped out a year or so that might be one that got bumped out. Something like, exterior door, or creating, kind of a person trap between the exterior and the interior, that kind of thing is a much more intensive project to set up. That's often a security measure that older school buildings don't have, where you can step in the exterior door, but then you have to connect with the office in some way before you can be let into the actual building itself. So you're in the airlock. And so that's a much more intensive kind of project.
It was more that the structure of the exterior doors was rotting away, and that the doors could not be certified to be secure. So that's one thing I'm surprised. Another thing that jumps to my mind is that the $7,000 for the kitchen floor. I thought that was inside your number. That's in the
The
regional.
lease, the current lease says that effective July 1st, 2025, which would be this year, $35,000 is anything below $35,000 is not a capital expense. So that would mean the floor replacement.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially.
And secondly, maybe it's inappropriate to speak about it, but I'm not a terrible, strong fan of extending that fire road next to my property.
Yeah.
Right now, no,
I get it.
and I only say it because right now, what it's used for, and I see it all the time, people go around, it's fine. There's no purpose unless you're saying this is part of the, and Craig, as a parent, maybe you know, as part of your flow structure for picking kids up, that's what you want to do. But other than that, I see no purpose in making that driveway stronger going around all the play yards in that back part of the school. That basically the north side has 2 fairly vibrant playground areas, and you want to make a road going around them.
Is that what the plan is?
Basically, that's it. That path going around that way would now be an official road.
So is that what, because I haven't heard that yet, is that what they presented?
Yeah.
Well, I'd first say that 35,000 is probably not going to get it done, just given the amount of pavement that would involve.
Right.
So that's the sort of, I view that project, and we had a conversation earlier today about whether to take, extend Fire Road off of the listing or not. I think because it's gone public, it was voted on by the school committee. I didn't want to change the title of it. However, I don't think that Fire Road is necessarily going to get extended with this appropriation of 35,000. I think, repairs a lot of work.
I also wouldn't have put it above the, going back to, and Daryl made a pretty compelling case, and I think Sharon spoke to it too, of the rekeying of the doors inside the school. How critical that was, so that if, God forbid, some emergency happens, they're not fumbling through a key train trying to figure out what opens A4. And to me, that had a higher priority than some of the things on this list.
Right.
So.
Well, what I can say there is that I had a conversation with our facilities director about those, the sort of different projects and where we're at and what we can do, and that was pushed off a little bit. The door, and replacement of doors, door hardware is a pretty significant investment. I mean, if you look kind of on the other side of this list, you'll see that there's a number of those in there, and each, sort of each building's in the, 45, 50, middle school's at 95,000, it's a pretty big bite. And there's also just capacity of staff to get it done. Because we'll do a lot of that work ourselves with our own maintenance staff. So I think the idea being that in comparison to the whole, if it waited a year, it would still be, it would be okay, not ideal, obviously, but.
And again, it's not something you can stagger, like, let's do some, let's do some. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing with the floor work.
Right.
That makes sense. Let's get 5, 5, 5.
Right.
But the door project, if you're doing it, you're doing them all, because you're doing it for a purpose that we're gonna make it convenient, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's best to do whole buildings and
Right.
at a time, if possible, on that, which I think was part of the thinking too, as far as bumping that out a year. And again, I think that if 35,000 is the minimum, then, the flooring maybe goes to 6 classrooms to get to 35,000, and then we pull off the kitchen floor. The other thing that crossed my mind this morning, I'll have to check with our food services directors whether that's eligible, if we can use some of our food service resources for that purpose. I know we can use it for things like buying a new oven or walk-in cooler, that kind of thing. It may be a thing where if we have resource available within our food service budget, it might be considered an eligible expense as well. So that's another thing that could potentially come up. I'll have to check on that and see whether or not that can be accommodated in a different way. But I think that was most of what I wanted to say about the capital. As far as what we have here on the list, we bumped a few things out. We try to modify it and reduce it a little bit to make it manageable, both from a financial standpoint, but also a workload standpoint for implementation purposes.
The flooring replacements, just background on it, we're doing 5 classrooms a year. Does that represent 10% of the building? Does that represent 15, probably, depending on the size of the building, obviously? And the lifetime on that, is it, because, Doug, we just did that 20 years ago, 21 years ago.
01 or
02, I think it was, so is the lifetime, is that why you're doing them in a staggered manner at this point, or?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons to stagger them is partly so that if you think about this sort of forever sense of going through, and it's like, then we're always taking, it's kind of like replacing police cruisers. It's like, instead of having to replace the whole fleet every 4 years or 5 years.
Right, exactly that, but is it a lifetime thing at this point? Like I said, people are gonna say, well, gosh, we just finished paying off that building. Right? Are we starting to see things fail, major things like this? Why are we replacing the floors?
Well, the flooring replacement right now is that's a Green Meadows specific one, so I think it's yeah, those are all.
Right, but
Are the floors peeling up?
Old part, the new part? There's part of the building that's the original, if you will, but why are we replacing those floors, is the question.
I think that what we're seeing is chipping and breaking in some places, some wear, some heavier wear in some places, and so some of it is due for replacement. Maybe I would suspect it's mostly in older portions of the building, or.
Well, I think that an explanation for that, because people are not going to say, oh my gosh, the 2 wings in the back, that can't be, they're brand new.
Right.
New wing on the side, that can't be. But if you're saying the main corridor, some of the ones we didn't touch in 02, okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
John, I think when I did a tour for capital planning there a few years ago, they were talking about, they were also replacing the floors with a flooring material that allowed them to cut down on caustic materials in the building. That was easier to maintain with environmentally safe cleaners.
Sure.
I think there was a whole angle about that. I don't remember the specifics, but it might be worth looking into.
Yeah, that could have been the older part of the building too.
Yeah.
Right. Everything, like you said, everything here has justification. Everything is defendable. Everything is needed at some point.
That's right.
we're buying a lot of those switches.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. John?
I have a question. You're looking at the $43,000 on the, so it's a side-by-side, to be realistic. It's not a tractor, it's a side-by-side. To spread the sand and salt. It doesn't do anything else?
No, I think it does. It does a whole host of things. It's about getting things moved from point A to point B,
It's traffic.
Was that?
It's pretty extravagant.
Does that include, are they gonna put a plow on that? Because I know those Kubota RTVs are really good for plowing.
I don't know
Looking at one
currently.
farm,
They can be.
you can put a Boss, a plow on them and really go to town.
Right.
But you can also get one that's a little less expensive, probably half the cost, with a plow. So I'm asking, again, what's the justification? You're looking at a lot of money.
Yeah, I think it's.
Sorry to say.
No,
It's, you know,
Appreciate it.
that was the cost of the doors that we got last year. I think it was $40,000 to fix the doors at Green Meadows. So, again, I'm granting that it's spread across both towns. But
Is this Kubota replacing a vehicle, or is
It's
this
replacing an existing one that we have
replacing
now.
an existing?
Yeah, and I think that it's a similar model to what we have currently, and have had for a number of years. So, it's not a recent replacement of.
So you're not adding to the equipment?
No, this is not an add to equipment by any stretch. It's a replacement of existing piece of equipment we have and the similar model and style that we've got and similar purposes, for sure.
All right, what do you got that's next?
Look at the rest of the mess.
Yeah, that was the easy part.
Yeah, exactly. So, so last Thursday, we took the school committee through a draft budget. And so just to take us through that, it's looks like that on the first slide, just so you know.
That was emailed this afternoon?
Was that?
It was emailed this afternoon?
That was mailed this afternoon, yes. Did include that in the email.
What's the title of it?
I think it's called fiscal 26 draft budget presentation or something, and they'll say 02, 27, 2025.
Find out.
Pretty long PDF.
This one?
Yeah.
All right. Where do we start? Right here?
We don't see it.
Just kidding. Still, what slide do you want to start on?
We can start on 3.
Yeah, if you want to move to page 3 on that. So what this page shows is what I presented at the budget roundtable. There's no change here, just a reminder of like, where were we at the beginning of February when we discussed this budget. And so a couple things to point out. We didn't know where we were going to be on our transportation costs. We had some idea, but we didn't have the refined numbers yet. We're still waiting on health insurance. We're still waiting on our Hampden County retirement assessment. We had put in steps for our union staff, but no COLAs for any individuals whatsoever. So that's where this looks, this exact same slide you saw before, but just a reminder of where we were. The slide, the next one, please. So what's happened since then? So there's a few things. So Hampshire County, Hampden County retirement assessment came back to us. They finalized our assessment increase at almost 13% higher. So that was much higher than we were, anticipating. They'd given us a number at the beginning of about 8%. But, there's a couple pieces that are involved with that. One is sort of what does the system need to sort of be on track to meet its requirements? But then it also changes depending on how many people you're responsible for. So if we kept.
We're completely familiar. I think everybody here is familiar with the way that pensions are calculated and assessed and, yeah.
So we got hit harder than, so we either.
The only way it would have stayed at 8% is if your salary numbers had not increased at all.
Right.
They didn't understand the question when they answered it.
Yeah.
It's pretty typical.
Yeah. So needless to say, that didn't help us much. Our health insurance was a little better than we anticipated. We had it at 7, it went to 4. We got a refined set of transportation costs from our transportation provider, which is Lower Pine Valley Educational Consortium. So we locked that in. There were aspects of our transportation costs that didn't change. It's really around our regular transportation for students on a day-to-day basis that improved just a little bit for us. And as is the case, and we continue to do this, is to go through and just have continuing conversations with our administrators and our staff and on budget and finding places that we might be able to shave a little bit here and there and get updated information from folks about what our needs are. So we had some modifications of individual budget lines that worked out to help us a little bit. And then I put in a COLA projection that's, as I write here, sort of consistent with current good faith negotiations. So we need to budget something based on what we've offered in negotiations, but also just as a place to make our request from you all for this purpose. And what we see when we do this, and this is kind of a consolidated version. Yep.
Are any of the contracts settled? You have 5 up, right?
That's correct.
Nothing settled.
No, not
None
yet.
of them are settled?
Not yet. So it's a lot of unknown in that regard. But we, tried to pick numbers that are available for like I said, good faith negotiations, but also understanding, the limitations that each of the communities has as far as, the resources they can generate from one year to the next. And so this is a bit of a consolidated viewpoint. It has all of our offsets, as they've been called in the past, and the revenues, which are things like Chapter 70 funds and interest income and use of E&D and that sort of thing. And those are all, the assumptions there in that lower half of this with the orange and blue are the same as they were before. So there were no changes to that. But what this...
Any indication that hold harmless figure is going to change, or are we still stuck at whatever it was, 25 or 50?
Still working off the governor's budget, which was $75 per student. We haven't seen House or Senate yet. I do hope that gets a little bit better. Traditionally, it does, but we don't know what those numbers are yet. Haven't heard anything about that.
But no significant departure from that. There might be a crumb.
I have not heard that.
Right. Yeah.
I have a question. Does the fair share funds, any of the education funds get sent to the towns on that portion in this governor's budget?
So fair share would be distributed to the towns through the Chapter 70 formula. As you can see, even with fair share, we are still a minimum aid, as are 233 other communities in the Commonwealth.
233 out of how many, John?
319.
Thank you.
351.
351?
319 districts. I should have said districts, not towns.
Well, that number's growing.
Yes. Yeah, so so the overall increase is about just shy of 6.3%. And the difficulty when we have, reductions in some of the sources that help us out, our entitlement grants are a little less, that offsets, our gains in Chapter 70 from the statutory minimum aid to what the governor proposed, or, basically reduced in half by virtue of the fact that we lost some funding through some of our entitlement grants. And that's really, the entitlement grant change is really driven by changes in the population of the two communities. It's not by who the students are. It's driven by the overall sort of census type demographic data. And so we transition from one threshold to another, and our funding dropped. And that's independent of changes in federal leadership that was in place before that change. So it's a pretty, but 6.3% is a pretty hefty increase. We're seeing, well, as you can see on the chart there, health insurance was 4, but that's still above Prop 2.5 kind of increases, and 12.7 at retirement. That's sort of an indication of what we're seeing in a number of areas for us. And so then, compounding that is, of course, what we're thinking about is happening with employees. That's the largest part of our budget. If we go to the next slide, you can see sort of a more traditional version of how we present, the budget. These are the offsets. This basically is the sort of, the top part's the expenses. That's the same as you've seen from years past, and where we are in the current year. The lower portion is just those things that are considered offsets. And so things that are considered revenues, like Chapter 70, interest income, Medicaid reimbursement, those things will be on what's classically been called the colored sheet. But nonetheless, this is sort of it's no different than what we saw on the previous slide. It's just a different presentation, and it is more classically where we are. And if you scroll to the bottom of this, I think it still got cut off. I should have updated this, but the percentage change at the bottom here, after you take the offsets out, and again, this is ignoring the sort of revenue piece, which has to do with Chapter 70, which is not what keeping pace and some of the other things. It's a 5.69% increase in our operating budget. And it would have been less had, some things held steady, but, we've got pretty significant drops in those entitlement grants that have impacted us and puts a greater burden on the communities to fund that. And so if we go to the next slide, please. And so a different way to look at this, and this is actually in alignment with the regional agreement, which says that we're supposed to use a grouping of accounts that the state has put together. And so we have these series of administration costs, instructional services costs, other school services. Other school services are things, I have a slide in a couple that you can look at later that talks about what those things are, but other school services are transportation, athletics, maybe health is in there, student activities, food service, that's what I was wanting to, operation and maintenance of plant, all utilities are in there, our maintenance work, that sort of thing. Fixed charges, that's where our retirement insurance is. So most of the cost there in that grouping is cost for people and the benefits we provide them, not exclusively, but most of that. It does have property insurance and a few other kinds of insurance in there, but most of that is people costs. Then you have debt and retirement service, that's exclusively the debt on the high school building, and then programs within the schools, which is mostly special education costs. And what you see here, and I split out salaries from expenses just to show sort of how much we're skewed towards people. And if you roll to the next slide, it has a kind of a pie chart, and the way to read this is to start at 12 o'clock and work clockwise around. So that dark blue at 12 o'clock, that 2% is our salary expense for administration. Then we have our other expenses that are administration expenses. That big green section is our salary expense for instructional services. So most of where we spend our money is on people to teach. That is inclusive of both regular and special education. Then the light green that follows it is the expenses related to instructional services. And then as we just work our way around clockwise, we see the other expenses broken by expense or salary. And I tried to kind of keep generally the colors the same. So our operation and maintenance salaries is in dark, and the light orange is the expenses. But you see the fixed charges there, the purple, it's a big chunk again. If we take and just tally up the stuff that's for people and salaries and benefits, it's right at about 75% of our budget. Almost exactly 75% is about people. We're in a people business. And, if you look at the town budget, it's going to be pretty parallel to that in a lot of ways. I mean, maybe not.
Well, the 10%, whichever, that's the 5,000 group. So that's retirement and health insurance, or
Yes.
just retirement?
No, retirement, health insurance, retirees' health insurance.
Right.
It has a few other things, some property insurance in there. It has, what else does it have in there? Bonding for people that collect cash, which is a really small number, but the lion's share of it is if you take health insurance and other insurances that you offer, and retirement, that's almost all of that.
The part where you actually buy books and stuff like that, is that the 3,000?
That's so that's going to be in the instructional services, light green, so that, sort of 2% there at
The part under expenses?
So, yeah, so if you see the dark green, that's the people that instruct, and then a lot of the stuff that falls into, sort of curriculum materials, that sort of thing, is that light green section. I will say, though, that there's some other things that are covered, as a district. So let's say we have some professional development, so that's going to be up under the administration category, just because we buy it as a group for the whole district. But yeah, it's sort of astounding how.
But I mean, I assume books are under expenses, not salary.
That's correct.
The 1.3 million out of.
That's correct.
That was my next question, thank you, Jeff, for
Well,
stealing my thunder.
The shift has been more electronic, of course. You know, there are some books still around, and our library still buy materials as well. But no, a lot of it is digital or electronic, and so some of that is in that section, there's no doubt about it. And, you know, but that's also where, you know, some of those other things that we're doing with regard to.
Buying computers, is that part of that as well?
I was gonna say, last year we had discussion about making computers operating expenses as opposed to capital, because it's
Yeah.
essentially operating things now.
So the computers are in there, and they fall more into it interestingly falls into a bit of the operation and maintenance of plant, because it's a physical device that you're buying, which is different than when we're buying software to use on the computers. That's going to be under instructional service
But
expense.
as long as they're in there.
They're in there.
Because we were talking about doing basically periodic replacement, so we don't get to the point where we're replacing all of them at the same time.
Right.
So this has a certain number of computers budgeted in.
It does. And so we're trying to do a regular replacement schedule of that, to have it sort of be a steady operating expense. And replacement schedule for that. If you scroll to the next page is just a description of those different categories and what's included in them, just for your information. So if you're wondering where does something live, that's how they're broken out. And again, it's sometimes helpful to see it in this view versus the other view, which is more building-based, but not exclusively. So there's just different views, the exact same set of data. And then if we go to the last slide is where the assessments are looking for fiscal '26. And, you know, they're pretty steep, you know, increases from the previous year. So, you know, as I noted before, we were about 6.3. So that's, you know, you guys are, I think, about 6.4. And
Is there, I see an asterisk there, but that's not actually on this page, or? It says this includes the capital assessments for the MRE, but
meaning I really should say the debt assessment. I should have used the
Not
word
capital.
debt. It's not capital, right?
Okay, yeah.
So the stuff we saw on the first slide 20 minutes ago, not on here, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Right. So the debt assessment that you see there for the, in the next to last line is for the building debt service.
It's been dropping every year.
Yeah, it's tapering over time. But it's a, you know, pretty significant increase from the previous year. And so I think I'll stop here, talking quite a bit. So I'll let you guys ask other questions that have come up for you or things you're thinking about with regard to that.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. And I think the other thing that, you know, we've been thinking about is the potentiality of whether, you know, you or Wilbraham or either or both of you can't make $41,464,824, right? Because, you know, that's a pretty significant. So we have composed, you know, administration has sat and gone through and composed, you know, a series of reductions that we presented to the committee.
And that was going to be my question. Is this essentially a level service budget?
This is a level service budget.
This is not cutting programs, it's not adding programs, it's
Right.
maintaining what we have.
I'll throw out my caveat that I always do. It's not quite level service because it is built on the reduction of TWB as a building with expenses with it. And it's also built on having 3-tier busing rather than 2-tier busing.
So there have been changes.
So there've been some changes and you know, more efficient ways of providing
But
services.
the objective was to provide essentially the same level of service.
Correct.
Without increasing programs or decreasing programs.
Correct.
We do have an important program increase. It's basically budget neutral, so it doesn't show up here, but we are still pursuing the Innovation Career Pathway at the high school. So that would be a new program, but it's a new program without additional costs.
I know Don did bring it up at a school committee meeting, but there has been a savings to the district by taking Thornton Burgess off your books.
Correct.
So, and you're taking that off our assessment.
Correct.
In a way.
Right over their head.
In a way.
In a way, exactly.
That $1 a year that we pay.
Oh, really?
That's right.
So I missed the roundtable meeting and with the legislators and stuff, and I know it's been brought up every year with the transportation reimbursement. How did they present that shortfall again this year?
There was a lot of smiling and handshaking, but
Oh, we'll look into it again.
Well, I can say that the governor's budget is starting off with 95% reimbursement. So it's at a good spot. It's not as recent years.
We've seen lower. We've seen lower. The thing is, we approach 100, like 100% as if we're doing us a favor.
Right.
That was the promise, 100% was the promise.
100% is the promise, that's what, the law says, subject to funding.
Yeah.
And it's never been the top priority, or other priorities bump it.
Was it only 1 year we ever had 100%?
I've never seen
I think it was the first year, 1997 and 1998.
somebody have to make a mistake.
I have a question. For capital planning and capital investments, are you targeting a certain amount and we should plan that going forward? Do you expect it to go up and down, or is it, what's the thought process there?
So I can give a sort of personal philosophy around that. I mean, I think at present, we're in a circumstance where it's probably gonna vary a little bit year to year. I think what I'd like to do, of course, as I understand it, and depending on how much sort of backlog of capital projects there are, it's a lot easier on both communities if the change year to year is something predictable, and that it's more defined so that you have anticipation and plan for it. So even if it's gonna increase 2% each year, you can plan for it and you can make your plan accordingly. I think there's also questions on some of the projects that we're looking into. They're big ticket items, but we're gonna try to, you wanna replace a roof, or you wanna do, replace all doors, windows in a building, exterior doors, windows. We're all gonna apply for MSBA funding to try to help us out. We'll all pay those sales taxes, and some of that money's ours, so we'll bring it back into the community. And so those things, sort of play a little differently because they're such big ticket items. They can have sort of spiking or drop effects. But so how we manage debt is a conversation we want to make sure that we're having as well. What stuff we're going to pay just cash capital, so here's the money, spend wisely, that's it, and what things we're going to borrow for. But yeah, to get to a place where it's a much more predictable and more even, not as much peak and valley would be ideal in my opinion, because I think you guys can plan better, but I think it also kind of depends on your capital in town too. If you get a lot smaller number of things, you may have more peaks and valleys than the town has, because if you replace it, I'll just make an example like police cruiser, if you replace one every year and then you have a year off, then or how many you have, or that sort of thing. But let's say you're on a replacement schedule, you may have 1 year replace one, 1 year replace one, 1 year replace one, and you have a year off. Well, suddenly there's a drop in capital that year, say $90,000. You tend to have more volatility in your number at the town level depending on what you're trying to cover. So we're, the school buildings and given the size and number of them, tickets, the sort of asks are bigger, but also hopefully we can structure the smaller, more modest stuff in a way that kind of keeps it as even as we can, would be best, I think, for everybody. So I'd like to get our 10-year capital plan sort of heading in that direction, and obviously, we start looking out more than a few years, you're speculating on things you need. Some things for sure you're gonna need in a couple of years, and some things it's like, well, we're gonna need that, and then something else interjects that you hadn't planned on, and you reshuffle the plan and go from there. I'd like to get a much more normalized amount. Some of these aren't planning for.
I think the advantage of Doug's background being on the select board before, I think it shows that he understands where we're coming from. So he's not just coming in from the Ivy College, and this is the number you need to pay it. He knows the constraints that your board, our board has to go through. So.
For sure.
Sorry, Kathy.
At our first subcommittee meeting this year, you did provide us with a fairly comprehensive 10-year, projection report of capital needs for every single school. And I was just wondering if, just to follow up on Brian's, question, has this been shared with anybody else besides the subcommittee? You know, I mean, I'm sure the school committee has it as well,
That would be who has seen it,
but not the select board who either town or,
I don't think so unless you guys brought it back to them, I don't think so. And I think it needs some more work.
I mean, I'm sure it needs to be tweaked and whatnot, but.
Yeah,
They're
we
on
have select board representatives in that subcommittee, but didn't we also bring this up when we were talking to Capital? We had a meeting with Capital and we brought it up with them. Wilbraham Capital.
Okay, so.
And I think some of you were at that
You
meeting.
haven't seen this?
I don't recall.
Okay.
I remember. It's very spectacular.
You do or don't?
What I would describe
See
it
that?
as.
Okay, so I've got-
I mean, I've got the hard copy right in my hand, so I.
So what's been presented here essentially is a refinement of what just told in that 10-year plan.
Yeah.
Or at least give,
It's
you
more
know,
just on the first year. I mean,
it's a starting, starting point to look ahead
Yeah.
and see what are some of the big ticket items that, are coming in the next few years. Might be very prudent for you to have this.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of that, there's a little bit of balancing in the out years that I've done, but only a little bit. So
Yeah, no,
there's a ton of them that need some more refinement. And some will be very dependent upon, our success with, the MSBA. They can provide a pretty significant amount of support for us. They're gonna, for accelerated repair, which is most of what we're gonna do, which is roofs, doors, windows, switch to a heat pump style system that we boilers anymore. They're going to an every other year application process, so we're gonna apply this month. And we'll see, that'll shift, we arrange the whole chart as that plays out.
Squeeze the bleachers into that somehow?
Sadly, no.
If we put a window in there?
I wish.
I don't have any questions. I'm pretty familiar with the numbers. Frankly, they're sobering numbers. But your job is to bring it to the town, the ask that you need to run the district, and our job is to review it and figure out if we can do it. We have a lot of things coming up, internally with the town, big ticket items.
I want to get into the weeds of it, whichever, I know it's Wilbraham's turn to be on the negotiating committee, and you probably.
Swindon, Mike Swindon.
Swindon? Okay. Do you think you'll have a resolution before town meeting? Michelle, you part of it? And not to get too deep into it, but is there a path forward you think?
There's hope, you guys see if there's hope.
And we always have hope. With feathers according to Woody Allen. I was on that committee a couple times, and it seemed like going through molasses, it really was. And the chance that we get up to after May, and we have to take, was it the 112, because we have no sense of the impact on your budget. We hope that doesn't happen, but you're hopefully getting some back and forth from your counterparts. You said it all.
Okay. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow night.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
You got a cola?
That we want to discuss some of that.
To close their meeting.
Downstairs. We came up with.
7:12.
Yeah.
They also have a meeting Thursday. That is supposed to take place.
2.5?
2.5 is the number that makes sense on the COLA.
I have no objections.
I think you're more than reasonable. I mean, obviously, if you look at the light of what the CPI is, et cetera, and the fact that, honestly, we've done a pretty good job, I think, in the past few years of keeping pace, and even one year, we did the double fours down to bring the equity to other communities. Would it be as much as people want? course not. But I think it's fair and it's relative in light of what's around us. We're all in the world around us, we know what it is. I would assume you would hope that we would be fair in applying that number.
It's the same discussion every year. Try to be fair to employees and fair to the people that are paying the bill. The balance there. And I'm sure some years, we're tip it one way or the other, but on balance, I think we do a pretty good job keeping that on the beat.
Last year was 3.
Last year was 3.5.
3.5?
3.5 last year.
3.5 last year.
Or the year before.
4 and 4, halfway 4 as well. The fact that we got-
Social Security's number is 2.5 this year.
Is it?
Yeah.
We did a step up on the health insurance, 75%. And we also increased life insurance as well.
Yeah, and you gotta remember too, that when people get steps, that's 2% every other year, so that's basically a 1% raise as well, so most people will get 3.5% over the period of
The
time.
ones that didn't get it last year. The ones that didn't get it last year.
Exactly, but they got 4.5 last year, or 5.5, yeah.
Right.
All right, so as long as
We're good.
they're in agreement, we're just not objecting, we'll proceed on that.
Carry on.
All right, very good. Thank you very much.
Is that our budget?
Well, first looking at what we've seen here, the little analysis. And like this next to the chair, it's about perhaps next week. I can't hear you.
March 10th, we're gonna meet next Monday.
Okay.
Well, we have to close the annual town meeting warrant.
Is there anything I made? I want to.
What do you got, Brian?
Throw this out
How many
there.
more?
Well, I want to throw out, I sent the email out.
They're right here.
Is there any thought, and Craig, you probably know this better, to making a motion to change the start of the annual town meeting? Right now, unfortunately, it's fixed, but it has to be 7 o'clock. Our experience with the 6:30 and the fact we're seeing some of these, it won't affect it this year, obviously. But is this a path we want to go down for the future? Or.
I heard a lot of pushback at 6:30 for fall.
You did?
I heard a lot of pushback at 6:30.
And just worry about something like this?
Well, pushback that they were not liking the 6:30.
Really? It takes so long to check people in, it's just like.
That was the consensus of the people I talked to, that they thought it was too early, based on work and dinner.
Okay.
I get your point, I just,
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
Looking at 30-plus articles, but the consent agenda may help. Yeah.
So everything that I have is in the draft warrant that was provided to the board. Right now, I have 35 articles listed.
What would be potential citizen thing is?
That was just a placeholder.
The potential citizen position was going to be a zoning, a change in the zoning bylaw, but they decided they're just going to bring it to the planning board and go through the process.
do we want to remove that? Or
So that can be removed.
32?
Yeah.
Is there a placeholder for that? You think they're getting done in time for this year?
No, it's closing it now. It's closing it tonight, done.
No, I'm saying, you're saying that things going through the process, they get the fall beat. Okay.
John, you mentioned it last meeting, the electronic voting, possibly mixing that.
Well, I think Rick was really the voice against that we're taking on too many changes at once or something.
I just trying to eliminate costs, and if we could.
Well,
do
that's,
that.
I
I think
I
if we
would go
take,
up
I think
with
we could take it off and then we could take, the fall total, we can see what we got for free cash, maybe we can do it for them for the next.
Well, for keeping the AV money in the budget, then yeah.
We have to do all that. So I think we can take that off, electronic voting.
19.
19.
I'm kind of confused about some of that CPA stuff, especially the purchase. And going back to, I thought we spent this money already, so what is this extra money for?
So it's not a money article. There was an appropriation of the CPA funds, but there was never an authorization from the voters to the select board to purchase the property.
That's an authorization to purchase the property, we got the money already.
Correct.
The CPA's got the money.
And then Article 11 is to turn around and grant to the Minichog Land Trust a conservation easement to connect for the proposed parking lot, which is, I'm sure, coming to the existing property, Mount Vision property. It's my understanding.
Are these the recommended orders, or are we thinking about maybe moving some stuff around?
I haven't given much thought to the exact order of how everything's gonna happen. One of the things so this has a consent agenda listed on it, because that's what the moderator suggested we try that. So the thing with the consent agenda is that there's one single motion for all those articles. So any dollar amounts that we might need for those articles need to be listed in the warrant. So if we wanted to list the conservation fund for $1,000 in, or we know what the assessor's mandated costs are, we could put those dollar figures in the articles and then include those in the consent agenda if we wanted to.
What was the thing on the Hampden anniversary thing, could be one of those, because we're talking 10, but what was the thing you talked about before that we needed to have some chapter and verse to be able to, that couldn't just be an appropriation, we need to make it more.
Oh, there's a specific anniversary revolving fund that can be created. The one time I had experience with this, it was much easier to run it through like a Friends of nonprofit organization than it was to run it through the town, but.
So the two appropriations we've done so far are being kept out as warrant articles to this point.
I'd have to double check, at least the 25 one is.
Separate warrant articles.
So, do we want to do Article 15, another 10, maybe?
Yeah, coming up against it, I mean, it's gonna cost some money here. Or do you want to push it, I mean, the other thing is to push it out of free cash, but kick the can down, I mean, every dollar free cash we get.
Can we use CPA for that? For the gazebo?
Is the gazebo historic?
Sure.
I mean, the line's built, and
Or recreation? It could be recreation.
Recreation, yeah.
Well, let's leave it on for now, we can talk about that. We're moving costs, electronic voting, we're taking electronic voting off?
Yeah.
One more for Parks and Rec, one more for the Highway Department. Compact wheel loader for highway.
Well, let's go back to the lawnmower for Park and Rec. I understand that's their request, but I got a lot of problems with why it's a request. But they can make their argument. But they came to us a few years back saying, oh my gosh, it's a pain to ask Mark to bring the mower over to Thornton Burgess. Can we have a truck and a trailer?
That was the whole reason for the truck and the trailer.
That was the whole reason for the truck and the trailer.
Yeah.
And now it's too much of a pain to use the truck and trailer the town gave them to bring the mower, so can.
So they want a second mower.
Second mower, leave it there. And I'm like, sure, can we have the truck and trailer back?
Give it to the facilities people.
Yeah.
We give it to the facilities people.
Well, I hate to say it, but I mean, that was the whole purpose of it.
Right. That was a
So I
big
think that's
purpose.
gotta be part of the conversation. Because they came up and said this, you know, I think we actually went through, Mark, we took a vehicle out of service earlier than it needed to be.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, right. So, then they'll need, they can't fit it in the shed there, a bigger shed will be.
One more for the Highway Department.
Market's pretty good for that, yeah.
Compact wheel loader, we put that on. Well, you know what our purpose is here? Our purpose is here, just to close the warrant.
Right.
We can take these
take
things
them off
off.
later.
We can take these things off.
All right, is there anything missing I would add in?
Yeah, the Green Meadow capital projects, if those are gonna come separately, then we need to add warrant articles for those.
Yeah, well, the answer there is forget it.
The question is, does it need to go on the warrant?
Yeah, but doesn't it also get into, so, Don, your point before about the capital of Minichog, they were separate.
Right.
Right now, we have one article, are we gonna separate them?
They didn't have a good answer for that.
They didn't, but I'm saying we could, I'm saying close it with the potential that that could be 26, 27, 28, I guess. You know,
Minichog, yeah.
We agree to leave the capital articles on the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
For both of them,
Yeah.
Minichog
Right.
and Green Meadow.
But they could go from 2 to 6.
Right. I just wanna point out, on the Green Meadows one,
35,000.
35,000 is the lease.
Yeah.
If they look at those as all separate projects, then
That's what I'm saying.
then they pay for them all.
That's why I
They
pointed
pay for
out,
them all.
yeah, it's under the one.
We said the kitchen floor, the floorings are gonna go from 30 to 37, because they're gonna combine them both. It's gonna be
They're
37,
gonna do an extra
Well,
room.
they're only getting 30,000.
or they're gonna add a room,
You said they're gonna have a room. To bring to 30,000.
so.
About
We're
30.
gonna vote no.
That would be duplicitous, stop that.
And I got news for you, no one's voted for $1.8 million for bleachers.
Bring your own lawn chairs.
I just thought it was funny they were factoring in the tariffs. I mean, you buy steel, aluminum in-house.
Can we melt down the other ones and sell it?
Yeah.
All right, so
Scrap value.
you're gonna make space for the miniature capital improvements,
Yep.
and you're gonna leave the, I guess, the Green Meadows on,
We'll add that in
but
there,
capital,
just a placeholder for now. We can agree to a placeholder, right?
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
we can agree to a place, we just
Okay.
wanna close the warrant so we don't get any more stuff going there. All right,
Motion to close the warrant.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Okay, now what about, selectmen's reports? Just on the going for seconds.
Are we skipping over the
Yeah, I
budget
mean,
review again?
that, I did attend virtually. Planning board thing I mentioned to Brian before, I think we should instruct the Zoom operators to try to make a better effort to, you may have seen that conservation ones as well.
Yeah.
So if there's a presentation on the floor, rotate the camera and say this is tomorrow morning.
Not doing PowerPoint, trying to get the road so they're on through. What do you got?
Nothing to report.
The Hampden Wilbraham Regional Planning Committee is meeting again, tomorrow night at 5:30. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock is the municipal building committee discussions we have. And on the 18th is a public forum for the master plan.
We're gonna put that on the website.
I would point
What?
out
They're
that on
fired.
the regional agreement, the issue of weighted voting, it's always said weighted voting. It's
always been there.
It's always been there, we just never done it.
So we don't need to press that then. It's already there.
That'd be it.
Brian, are you touching, in your report, are you touching on the new plan, the new proposed layout for the school building?
I was gonna talk about it tomorrow, the meeting tomorrow.
You're gonna nitpick it tomorrow, so it's.
That's fine.
TA report?
Spending a lot of time on Thornton Burgess.
John, but that's a whole different-
We talked with moving companies.
3 years of my life, stop it.
We've had 2 moving companies come by to assess what the cost would be of moving the administrative offices and the library to TWB. I also met with one energy consulting company who is associated with National Grid, who's gonna be doing HVAC audit and lighting audit at TWB, and give us cost estimates for upgrading the lighting and HVAC upgrades, so we can contemplate those as well, so.
I was
About it.
anticipating at the last meeting a full report on double poles, Don, because I took so much time on the loader last time.
I do have a report on that, but I won't bring it. I do have a report on that. Well, could you repeat what you just said? 'Cause
About which one? Oh, the energy?
yes,
The energy consultant?
sure.
So they're doing a lighting audit of TWB and HVAC audit of TWB and the senior center, actually, because at the last building meeting, we talked about looking at both buildings. So they did the HVAC audit today, and the lighting one will be scheduled. Just the initial visit, they think there could be a significant amount of savings, because all the classrooms are wall-to-wall fixtures, lighting fixtures, and they thought they could reduce those by probably 2/3. So we'll wait for that, but we were promised that would be happen shortly, so.
Anything else? I would entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law 38, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiation of non-union personnel, specifically the highway superintendent, and also a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the highway employee union, not to return to open session.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Don Davenport, aye.
Craig Rivers, aye.
Who do we want to start with?